Let's make this soft and fluffy sandwich bread.
Hey y'all, welcome to Robyn on the Farm. Today I'm going to show you how to make some really good soft, white, and fluffy sandwich bread. I have 4 kids and for some reason they really like to eat like 3 meals a day plus snacks. So we go through a ton of food in this household and I make a ton of sandwiches using this sandwich bread. It's really good, it's really yummy. Now sometimes I'll use my bread machine to totally make this recipe. This is the recipe for potato bread that I shared in my last video, but I wanted to show you how it turns out when you use your dough cycle or your stand mixer and make this same bread. It turns out way different. The texture is way different, the crust is way different. It's even softer, fluffier, and better. So sometimes I like to make it in my bread machine and sometimes I like to just use the dough cycle or mix it up in the stand mixer or even hand knead it and then throw it in the oven to bake. I just like the crust on most of my breads better when I do bake it in the oven, but it just kind of depends on the day and how much time I have and that kind of thing. But today I am going to just let my dough cycle do all the work and then I'm going to shape it into a loaf and throw it into the oven. It turns out fabulous this way. So let me just show you how I make it. This is a really good simple recipe. You just throw all of your ingredients into your bread pan and then let your bread machine dough cycle do all the work. Now, like I said, you can also hand knead it or you can use a stand mixer or a Bosch type mixer and do it that same way. This recipe turns out great any of those ways. So let me just show you how I make it. This is 1 1/4 cups of hot water. So just throw that right into your bread pan. And then you want 2 tablespoons of melted butter. So put that right on in there with your water. Next, you want 3 cups of flour. Now, you can use all-purpose flour if that's what you have, or if you have bread flour, even better. I prefer bread flour, but you can definitely make this with all-purpose flour. So use whatever you have. You can even use some whole wheat flour if you want to fresh mill it up. But you know, this is sandwich bread, soft, white, fluffy sandwich bread, so I'm just going to use bread flour. Really turns out the best this way. So 3 cups of flour. Just throw that right on in there. Then you're going to want 2 tablespoons of sugar. So 2 tablespoons, just plain old white sugar. Okay, next I want 2 tablespoons of instant dry milk powder. So let me just show you this. This is my dry milk powder. This is just like Great Value brand, cheap old instant dry milk, non-fat powdered milk. And I took it and I put it in this glass jar and I sealed it up using my food saver. If I had just left it in the original bag, it would have lasted for a few years. It would have been fine. But once I put it in this glass jar and seal it up, it'll be good at least 10 years. So that really extends the shelf life. And that's important to me because I love to keep food storage. So I have a ton of this in number 10 cans and in different size glass jars just like this. I also like to just use these kind of things. Even though we don't drink this kind of milk really, I like to use it in my breads and I like to cycle through it a little bit so that if I ever do need to use it, I'll know what to do with it. But sealing it up will make it last way longer. Now, when you use instant dry milk in your breads, it gives your bread a better texture, gives it a better crumb, makes them softer and fluffier, which is what I'm going for in this recipe. So I'm going to use 2 tablespoons of instant dry milk. Now you can use like the dry milk that has fat in it, like the Kneading brand and that kind of thing. That won't have a very long shelf life, but you can use it in your breads just fine. So it doesn't have to be non-fat milk powder. Okay. Now my next ingredient is 1/2 cup of instant potato flakes. So this is another thing I store in my food storage. I like to keep this stored in big buckets, number 10 cans, different size glass jars. I like to keep it in my pantry just like this. Now, the reason I sealed it up like this was this had about a year shelf life in the regular cardboard box that it came in, but I sealed it up like this. This will be good at least 30 years like this. So that's pretty incredible. Obviously, I'm gonna probably cycle through it before 30 years gets up. But like I said, I like to use the things that I store in my food storage so that I can be using them, rotating through them, and also in case I ever actually need to live off these kind of things, I'll know what to do with them, I'll know how to use them, it won't be a foreign thing. So 1/2 cup of instant potato flakes. All right, next we need some salt. So 1.5 teaspoons of salt. Just throw that right on in there on top of everything else. And our last ingredient is yeast. This is my active dry yeast. This is the Red Star brand. I really like this stuff. I store a ton of this in my freezer. And even this one, I store this in my freezer and I get it out right in time to make bread. So store your yeast in your freezer and it'll stay good for years and years and years past the expiration. This one right here expired 2 years ago, but it's totally fine. I use it all the time. I know it works. So 1.5 teaspoons of yeast. You can also use instant yeast, rapid rise yeast, anything like that. You can make a little well if you want to, or you can just throw it in because you really don't need to do that. Okay, those are all of our ingredients. So like I said, totally simple bread to make and it's white, soft, and fluffy. It is so good. You're gonna love it. So now I'm gonna throw all of these ingredients into my bread maker. This is my Zojirushi bread machine. I love this bread machine. It is amazing. I have used so many bread machines over the years, but this one is the best by far. So it's super fun for me to use it. Like I said, I'm just gonna use the dough cycle today, so I'm gonna set it to the dough cycle and press start. And this will take 1 hour and 28 minutes for the dough cycle to complete. At the end of that time, then I'm gonna get it out of here. I'm gonna shape it into a loaf and I'm gonna put it in my loaf pan and then I'm gonna let it rise one more time and then I'm gonna stick it into the oven to let it bake. So I will show you all of that when we get there. It's totally simple. Love this bread. You are gonna love it. So it's only been a couple minutes, but I wanna check on my ball of dough. Yep, that's looking great. There's no ingredients stuck to the sides of the bowl. There's no like flour not mixed in. It's not too sticky, and I know that because there's no dough like sticking to the sides and the bottom, and it's not too dry looking either. Now this is just a couple minutes into the kneading process, and in a few more minutes it should look a lot more smooth, but I need to give it a little bit more time. But this is about what you want it to look like, just maybe 5 minutes into the kneading process. All right, it's been about 10 more minutes. Let's take a look at it. Yes, look at that dough. Nice and smooth. It looks beautiful. Now I'm just gonna close the lid and let the dough cycle do its thing. All right, the dough cycle is totally complete. It's been about an hour and a half, and here's our dough. I am just gonna get it out of here, and it's time to shape it into a loaf. Okay, so when you're getting it out of your bread machine, make sure the paddles aren't stuck in it. One of my paddles is stuck in it, so let me get that out really quick. Definitely don't want to bake that up in your oven. Okay, so the first thing you want to do before you shape your loaf is press out your dough. You want to get it free of any air bubbles. So you just want to press it out really good. You can see that this dough is really nice. It's easy to work with. It's not too sticky. So it's going to be ready to shape into a loaf. So I'm going to use my cast iron bread pan. I love these bread pans. These cast iron bread pans are amazing. They are my favorite by far of any I've ever used. And I plan on using these for the rest of my life. They are super durable, they're great. The thing that I like the best about them is that my bread bakes so good in them. It bakes bread so evenly and so nicely. So I love these things, I highly recommend them. But I am gonna just shape my loaf now. So take your loaf, shape it however you want. Doesn't have to be complicated, but I just pull my sides down and then I pull the top down and then I kind of press it out with my palms and then I keep rolling it into a loaf. Okay, it's just a nice shaped loaf of bread like that. So press it out, press it out. This will give you the best texture if you kind of like let it relax. If you smack it around a little bit, that helps it to relax and you'll get better texture for your bread. So that's looking good. Now I'm just gonna plop it into my loaf pan, just like that. Okay, and kind of squish it out a little bit, and there you go. So now I'm just gonna leave it on the counter for about 20 minutes and let it rise one more time, and then it'll be ready to throw into the oven. While it's rising, I'm gonna set my oven to 350 degrees, and then I will show it to you what it should look like right before I put it into the oven. My dough has been rising for about 15 or 20 minutes and it is already ready. It's kind of warm in my home, so that's probably why it rose so quickly. If yours is cooler, it might take a little bit longer, but It's looking great. This is exactly what you want it to look like before you put it in the oven.
Let it bake at 350 degrees for 30 minutes.
You want to put it in there really carefully so that you don't let your bread deflate.
Now I'm going to take a pat of butter and just rub it all over the crust because it'll help it give it a really nice soft crust. Plus the shine is really beautiful. Now I'm just going to wrap it up in this tea towel and let it cool on the counter. It's so hard for me to let my bread totally cool because I like nice hot bread fresh out of the oven. But today I let it cool all the way so that you can see how well this bread slices. I will put the recipe for this soft, white, and fluffy bread down in the description. Thanks so much for being here with me. Please like, share, subscribe. I'll see you next time on Robyn on the Farm.